Thank you so much, Malika, and to all of our hosts here in this very special sacred space in the city, and to the hosts who are ancestors looking down and in this space right now, making sure that we do right and continue to fight in our city. We are here to take a step forward. I want to thank everyone for joining us here at the African Meeting House, birthplace of the New England Anti-Slavery Society, and for being part of today's announcement. I want to recognize that there are many colleagues from government surrounding and with us, some elected colleagues who are in the room. State Representative Brandy Fluker-Oakley, thank you for your leadership and partnership. City Councilor Kenzie Vach, thank you for your leadership and partnership at the city level. Let's see if I missed anyone. And thank you to the many hands who have, over decades and generations, laid a foundation so that this city could walk the walk that we are about to embark on starting today. The City Council especially has been instrumental to this conversation in recent months and years. Oh, speaking of, another colleague walked in the room. Welcome and thank you, City Councilor Ricardo Arroyo. This was a conversation that began decades ago and one that has its roots in our earliest history. Our Commonwealth was just a colony. Boston was a primary port of departure for ships engaged in the transatlantic slave trade. Yesterday, we learned that parishioners at the First Church in Roxbury, after research that they have undertaken, learned that parishioners enslaved at least 58 people as early as 1631, just a year after Boston was first founded as a town. Even after Massachusetts outlawed slavery, our region continued to benefit from the labor of enslaved people. That legacy formed deep, painful, and lasting systems of exclusion and inequity that persist to this day. Inequities are evident through the disparities that we see in wealth and income, home ownership, education, access, neighborhoods, and health, even in the air that we breathe. That's why here, History Month, our City Council an ordinance to study reparations and address the disparities that our Black residents face. That ordinance and all of the organizers, activists, and educators whose work informed it helped us get to this moment, to the opportunity that we have today and the responsibility to build on the work of all those who came before, people who we remember and try our best to follow in the footsteps of, leaders like the late State Senator Bill Owens, who in 1989 was one of the first to introduce legislation to study reparations in the country. Nearly 35 years later, we're grateful to all those who refuse to give up the fight for justice, who have understood and continue to push that there is no statute of limitations on addressing wrongs that we have the ability to make right. Today we're announcing a reparations task force to bring together experts and those with lived experience and deep community connections to help us begin the process. We're doing so with full transparency and in committed partnership with Boston's Black community. This task force will have two major functions. First, to document Boston's role in the slave trade and the institution and legacies of slavery and its continuing impact on our communities. And second, to assess what actions we as a city have taken and consider what actions we can take moving forward to acknowledge truth, foster reconciliation, repair harm, and restore and strengthen our communities. This conversation has been generations in the making, and we are appointing a multi-generational task force to reflect the full breadth of that history and struggle. And so you'll hear from a few of the members shortly, but I want to just quickly introduce just a brief snippet of their long and deep experience in our communities and that they bring to this work. Joseph Feaster. Mr. Feaster will serve as chair of the Reparations Task Force. He's a veteran attorney of real estate, city contracts, labor and employment, and so much more, and a member of the City of Boston's Black Men and Boys Commission. Shout out to Director Frank Farrow, who's in the house as well. Mr. Feaster is board chair of the Urban League of Eastern Massachusetts and the youngest president of the Boston branch of the NAACP. Lamerci Frazier, former Boston artist in residence and director of education at this very museum. Ms. Frazier will bring her perspective as an artist and public historian, and we are so grateful for her work. George Chip Greenidge Jr. has long been a pillar of Boston's Black community and traces his roots and his family's roots in our city back to the 1800s. His work supporting young people at Greatest Minds, alongside his background in education, urban economic development, and understanding the impacts of gentrification, will be invaluable to this task force. Dr. Carrie Greenidge, who is on her book tour today, brings a deep understanding of our past as historian in residence here at this museum. An author and educator, she has worked with the Boston African American National Historic Site, writing and publishing the book Boston's Abolitionists, and a biography about civil rights activist William Monroe Trotter. At Tufts, she serves as Director of American Studies, co-director of the African American Trail Project, and Assistant Professor of Studies in Race, Colonialism, and Diaspora. Professor David Harris, who served as the bridge connecting academics, policymakers, and grassroots advocates as the inaugural managing director of the Charles Hamilton Houston Institute at Harvard Law School, and as founding executive director of the Fair Housing Center of Greater Boston. He's a former public servant with both the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and the United States Commission on Civil Rights, with a wealth of experience advocating for regional equity and fair housing. Ms. Dorothea Jones is a longtime resident of Roxbury, life to the equitable development of her neighborhood and our city, including as a member of the Roxbury Strategic Plan Oversight Committee. And she's been a dedicated champion of civic and electoral engagement in the Black community and the city at large. Ms. Carrie Mays, who you'll hear from shortly, BPS alum. Where is Carrie?
On her way.
Oh, okay. I don't see Carrie. Okay. I will make sure that we read her bio too, and she's on her way. BPS alumna and student at UMass Boston, who's been a youth organizer and advocate for years, calling for accountability and organizing for justice across our city and state. She's organized one of the Commonwealth's largest marches against police violence and has been a longtime leader at teen empowerment, and her perspective will help us envision a more just future for all of us, as she's already been doing across so many spaces in the city. Natisha Mills, as program manager, at Embrace Boston, she's brought communities across the Commonwealth into this conversation, and her work on this task force will center our residents in continuing the efforts and our outreach to advance healing and restore trust. And representing so much, but especially respecting the wishes of the City Council and so many in our community to ensure that young people in our community representing Boston's Black community were firmly centered and leading this work as well. I'm so excited to welcome and thank Denelson Fanfan and Damani Williams. Student athletes at the Burke High School, where they play basketball together, and want you all to know that they won the game last night. And are driven by a deep love for their communities. Denelson comes from a family passionate about social justice and lives by his grandmother's wisdom that you don't need money to make a difference. You can do that right here, right now. And Damani has a keen interest in history and how it informs our circumstances and actions today. And I just want to recognize that both of these incredible young leaders were recommended and highlighted by multiple of their peers and educators as representatives of our school community and of this generation that we wanted to make sure are leading this conversation. Thank you for being with us. we are about to embark on, that we are about to take one more step on, is deep, it is overdue, but it will still require all of us to think about our own connection to the flow of history, our place in it, and how that can flow to a different future. We wanted to do this work partnering with our colleagues at the city level, at the state level, at the federal level, in ensuring that we're centering the faces of our community, of our neighbors, and the stories lived, professional, built, from past, present, and future. And so thank you especially to members of our task force who are our friends and neighbors, our community members, who are going to work alongside each and every one of our residents to help us understand what reparations could look like here in the city of Boston. We are a city nearly 400 years in the making. And before we reach that milestone, our 4th-century anniversary in 2030, thanks to the incredible group of people we have here today and so many others who have been pushing this effort along and will be engaged along the way, we will be another step closer to reconciling our complicated history with our vision for a more connected, more inclusive, more equitable Boston for all of us. Now, I'm supposed to pass it on to Carrie, so I think we will invite up our chair, Joe Feaster, to say a few words on behalf of the committee, and thank you so much again. It is an honor to be with you all.